You know, it really, I've been struggling a lot with some serious PTSD because back in 2020, my mom was living about 3.5 hours away from me, and she was showing signs of dementia. And I needed to move her closer to me. There was nobody there. We had, because of COVID, it was the beginning of COVID, a lot of assisted living facilities and memory care facilities weren't taking anybody. And those that were had very strict policies. And I unfortunately couldn't take her in my house. My house was not conducive for somebody that has memory care issues. And I work a ton, but I wanted her to be near me so that I could see her. And so I convinced her to move because I wanted to care for her. I wanted to look out for her. I wanted her close to me. I wanted to be able to make sure she was okay. And then the Biden administration decided that they would put so many regulations on things and make shots mandatory that my visits with my mom, I was told when I got there that I'd be able to see her and I'd be able to visit her, and I'd be able to visit her every day after work. And then it turned into, well, no, now we're quarantining. We're quarantining for 10 days because somebody came up positive for COVID. So we have to quarantine. Now, during that quarantine time, I was not allowed to see my mom. I was not allowed to go visit her, not even with a mask, not even if I got the shot. However, I was allowed to pick up my mom, take her out to the grocery store, or take her out to a restaurant, or take her to my house where tons of people may or may not be vaccinated, germs all over everywhere. And that I was allowed to do, and bring her all around people that may or may not have been vaccinated, all around all those germs, and then take those germs back into the building. I was allowed to do that. But I was not allowed to physically go up into my mom did not share a room with anybody. It was a singular room by herself. I couldn't come up, close the door, be by myself with my mom. But caregivers were allowed to come in and out all day, all different caregivers, not the same caregiver, different caregivers throughout every shift, different med techs, doctors, nurses, housekeeping, aides, the aides. Sorry, I'm so tired and I am so upset right now, but they were allowed to come in and give my mom a shower and that kind of stuff. I, however, was not allowed to go up and visit her. It was like a ticker tape parade. There were tons of people in and out of her room, in and out of her room. That was allowed. Well, my mom, unfortunately, was not mobile. She had an oxygen tank and she had double hip surgery. So to get my mom in and out of my car that sits kind of low, Henry, was very, very difficult on her hips and on her. And getting her oxygen tank out was difficult. It was just, and then she was incontinent. She suffered with incontinent issues. So trying to get her to places, I couldn't. There's not enough grocery scooters. There's not those scooters at a lot of the grocery stores. There's only like 2 or 3, at least where I'm from. And they're usually being used by overweight people that should be doing nothing but walking. They should be walking and not using the scooter. Or people just joyride on them or use them when they don't need to use them. And then they take them away from people that actually need the scooters. And there's hardly any of them. So point being, I couldn't personally take my mom out, which means I was being kept from her. Well, she was able to use a phone for quite a while and we could call and talk to each other. But calling and talking is not the same thing as being able to physically touch my mom and look my mom in the eyes and see my mom face to face. Again, all the caregivers could, all the med aides could, all of the dietitian aides could, the housekeeping could, the doctors, they could all come and go, all different ones throughout the day. I could take her out to grocery stores where she could bring who knows what back. That was all okay, but I could not go see her. I could only talk to her. Well, then she was getting worse and worse and was no longer able to remember my phone number. And I had to have caregivers dial the number, give her the phone, and talk. Again, not the same. Then that just got to be too difficult. And I wasn't even able to talk to my mom. And then there were all these restrictions with COVID that the different governors of each state decided to put on. So my mom got very scared and used to try to have caregivers call me, or I would call and have caregivers put the phone up to her so I could talk to her. And she would beg me. She would beg me to come and get her, to come and save her, because she didn't want to die alone. She would say all the time she did not want to die alone. So I got in my car and I went to go see them, and they were like, we'll call the cops. And I'm like, you do you. If you want to call the cops because I want to see my dying mom, go for it. And in their defense, they did not call the cops. I was able to talk to her. I was able to talk to her, but not very often. And then she got where she was hallucinating, and basically my mom ended up dying alone with caregivers around. And all these people that were in assisted living had to look through windows. If you were on a first floor, that's great. What if you're on a second or third floor? Would you wave down through the window to the parking lot to your loved ones? Keep in mind, the Biden administration did this. They had people die for no reason, alone and scared. Alone and scared. People at assisted living facilities need to have that socialization. They need to have their activities. Even their activities were getting taken away. They weren't even allowed to go down and eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner in the dining room together, being social together. Weren't allowed to do that. Activities got canceled. So now these poor residents are sitting there alone with no family, no activities. And again, the caregivers could come and go. The housekeeping could come and go. But I did catch them. They weren't showering my mom. My mom was sitting in her own filth in the same freaking clothes that she had on 10 days prior. And she was paying for that, but they weren't keeping her. You want to know why? Because it was short-staffed. Because they were making it mandatory for people to inject their bodies with poison, making it mandatory for people to do that, so people were quitting. So then now they have a bunch of residents that aren't getting cared for or not getting the quality of care that they need because they're short-staffed. So now these residents can't go out for meals. They're being kept alone. They're being kept away from their family members, and they're not getting bathed as often as they should. They're not getting their clothes changed, their hair brushed as often as they should. So they're just sitting in their own filth, alone, scared, lonely. And a lot of them with dementia just think that their families just forgot them. To this day, I have PTSD because I am the one that made my mom come here thinking that I was going to be able to see her. And the Biden administration and our governor took my mom away, and she died alone and scared. And I want people to remember that, because it's not okay. And this happened to so many people. This happened to people in hospitals that didn't get to be there for their loved ones when they were dying. This happened everywhere. People got taken away from their loved ones because of the Biden administration and the lies and the deceit. They were, it's my body, my choice. And you can kill babies, and you can mutilate freaking babies and take out their body parts and sell the body parts. Planned Parenthood sells the body parts of the aborted babies. That's okay. It's okay to give sterilization drugs to minors. That's okay. And it's okay to keep the elderly away from their family and make people inject their bodies with drugs that they don't want. That's okay. Keep in mind, the Biden administration and the Dems are for this. They're for sex trafficking. They're for the drug cartel coming over and taking children for sex trafficking. They're okay with all the fentanyl coming in. They pass out needles. I mean, here in Oregon, it's totally cool to just shoot up on the streets. So they promote you graduating also with not having to know basic math, basic reading or writing. Don't have to know it. So they want you stupid. They want you to mutilate our children. And they just want us, they want all the control. It's sadistic. It's gross, and it's sadistic, and it's disgusting. And I will never, ever forgive the Biden administration for having my mom die alone and scared. So I hope you guys remember that when you're voting. Trump 2024 all the way.